This is Gerardo Del Real with the Outsider Club. Joining me today is Outsider Club founder, colleague, and friend, Mr. Nick Hodge. Nick, how are you today?
I'm doing well, Gerardo. We're in beautiful Colorado here in the fall season for the Beaver Creek Summit. I've never been. The weather is nice. Companies are good. The market not so good, but it'll turn.
You know, an exception to the market not being good is the uranium space. You called the bottom in 2018. What led to the call? I mean, the spot price is up over 35% from the 2018 low, and a lot of companies are starting to tick up.
When you've been calling the bottom for the past 3 years, sometimes you get lucky. I think the market just finally decided to turn, and there were some catalysts that led to that. I mean, it wasn't all blind luck, of course. I call myself a blind squirrel sometimes, and I say I find a few nuts here and there, and that call in January, I guess, was one of them. But we had seen the Kazakhs say that they were going to begin to cut supply. That's the largest producing nation of uranium in the world, some 40% of supply. Cameco, the world's largest publicly traded producer, then announced that they were going to make major cuts from some of the largest mines in the world, McArthur River, for example. And so that was a catalyst really for the market to wake up and say, hey, there's something very real going on with uranium here. If the market is not going to make the price go up, because remember, the spot price at the time was around $20 a pound. No one makes money mining uranium at $20 a pound. And so it was, it's like looking at a train. Who's going to blink? Is the market going to do it itself? And obviously that didn't materialize. And so the biggest producers were just like, you know what? Hey, we're going to exercise our force majeure here, and we're not going to produce. And so we've seen the price come up from $20 a pound to $27 a pound. That's the highest it's been in about 3 years. We've seen some of the equities follow suit, especially some of the names and some of the more well-known names, especially here in the United States for reasons I'm sure we'll discuss in a second, names like Energy Fuels, for example. And so, we're still nowhere near the prices that we need for producers to be able to supply. I think people forget that it's 20% of clean baseload electricity here in the United States. And look, at some point, you can't bring minerals out of the ground at a loss forever or at all. So the price has to rise, or as everybody quotes Rick Rule, the lights go out.
You mentioned the mine closures. Those mines that were closed and the production cuts came from the highest margin, lowest cost producers in the space. What companies do you see benefiting disproportionately from the current uranium space, and why?
Well, I like U.S. companies right now. We can talk about the Section 232 petition that's working through the Commerce Department. They initiated that a couple of months ago. And they have 90 days, I believe it is, to make a report to the president, and then he has to make a decision on whether or not to impose some sort of structure to help incentivize U.S. domestic production, because right now it's at historic lows. We produce only 3% of the uranium we need to supply our largest uranium fleet, nuclear utility fleet in the world, 99 reactors. As I said, 20% baseload power. And so with or without the Commerce Department, the United States needs to produce more uranium, just as they needed to produce more oil 5-8 years ago. And we saw what happened with the shale boom when we had the technology to bring it out. But we have the technology here for uranium as well. We have great in situ assets in Texas and Wyoming and South Dakota. Some companies that are unhedged, like Uranium Energy Corp, for example, UEC, that's just blatantly said for the past couple of years, we're not producing, we're not selling into this market, entirely unhedged. And so when the price goes up, they're able to flick their switch because their plant and processing plant is fully constructed. And so what that means is they have complete leverage to the price of uranium. Once the price of uranium starts to go up, the equity can soon follow suit. And I'm not a young guy. I didn't get to witness the first uranium run in 2007. I had just started in the market. And so if people will remember, they'll remember that uranium went to over $140 a pound. And as a result, related equities went up by tens of thousands of percent. And so I think we're staring at that again. And I'd point back to the US companies for the reasons I mentioned.
What do you think is the biggest misconception in the uranium space right now, specifically in the US?
Well, it's that it's not safe. And if you point to 3 Mile Island or Chernobyl or Fukushima, those are high-profile, high-impact examples that grab the attention, and it's easy to take control of an argument when you have events like that. But at the end of the day, per kilowatt hour generated, as I like to say, nuclear energy is the safest form of electricity generation the human race has ever seen. The fewest deaths or injuries or calamities per kilowatt hour of electricity generated over history. And so it's extremely safe. It's also, there's the misconception that it's dirty. Well, it's not. It's clean. It's the only form of clean baseload power, in fact, that exists today. And so but we can point to California, who just passed a law that said they have to go 100% carbon-free electricity. I don't know the dates, in the next decade or something like that. And people, renewable proponents are clapping their hands, and they should, of course. We need more solar and we need more wind, but at the end of the day, solar and wind are not baseload. They can't produce when the sun is not shining, they can't produce when the wind is not blowing, and so they either need batteries, which are still very expensive, or they need a backbone of baseload power so that can blend out the intermittency of the renewable sources, and that's what nuclear does in a clean and safe capacity. And I think another misconception is they just don't know how much it produces. 1 in 5 lights are on because of nuclear reactors.
What do you see as the biggest catalyst for 2019?
We need to see utilities come into the market. We've been saying that for 2 years and we still haven't seen it. And the reason is, one, it doesn't take a lot of uranium to run a nuclear reactor. The fuel cycle is long. Two is they don't care what the price is. So it's not like, oh, the swap price went from $20 to $27. Let's get in there and write contracts. They don't care because it could go to $50 or $60 and it's still such a small proportion of the cost of building and permitting and operating a nuclear plant that it's minimal to the utilities. And so that's the biggest catalyst. They're going to be lemmings, right? I mean, one's going to come in and then they're all going to come in. And as we already covered in this interview, nobody can meet contracts at these prices. So prices by necessity have to rise.
You mentioned the input costs for utilities being so small, the uranium aspect of it. Is that why we get those violent moves to the upside and downside in down markets, right?
Well, it's part of it. It's also herd mentality. I mean, just think back 8 months to crypto. We had Bitcoin go from a couple thousand bucks. It seems like so long ago because now we're in a new bubble with pot stocks. But you know, we saw Bitcoin go to $20,000 like that. Just this week, and we're dating this interview, but just this week, Tilray's market cap doubled from $150 to $300 million in a single day. And so...
And back. It was a round trip ticket.
That's exactly correct. And so with uranium, it's the same thing. Yes, to your point, it's because of the utilities don't care about the elasticity of the price, but it's also herd mentality of investors. It's also that there's only a dozen uranium producers in the entire world, so there's not a lot of equities to chase after once the money starts coming in. And it's also that these companies are just leveraged to the price of the underlying commodity, right? So when the price goes up by X, the stocks go up by X squared.
You've been at this for a while. What should speculators and investors that maybe are newer to the space that are seeing these 20 and 30% moves in the uranium equities and the uranium spot price, what should be on their checklist for due diligence?
As I said earlier in the year, first of all, you're not too late. A 30% rise in equities still means they're down 80% over the past 10 years, so they still have plenty of room to run. Second, I'd like to buy assets and management teams and not necessarily stocks. So look for assets that are proven, that have some sort of economic metrics tied to them, either through a preliminary economic assessment or an early stage feasibility study, that are economic and lowest quartile prices, that have high internal rates of return, that have high net present values, that are run by good management teams, that have been good stewards of shareholder capital over the downturn. Those assets aren't going anywhere.
Excellent. Is there anything else you'd like to add?
Oh gosh, it's going to be fun when they start to turn. I mean, look, I recommended Energy Fuels just in January, and I think we've nearly doubled our money already, just over halfway through the year, a little bit more than halfway through the year. And so that speaks to how fast these can run. And you know, doubling your money in that amount of time is fun, but it ain't nothing compared to a 10-bagger.
You mentioned the recommendation. If people are not familiar, how can they subscribe to your newsletters, your services?
On outsiderclub.com, they can see newsletters or articles for free every day. They can sign up for the daily free newsletter, and they can see all the paid products that we offer, not only me, but you and others in the resource space. And yeah, the information is free. Follow along. We try to keep you as up to date as possible, and we truly think a uranium bull market is coming. And on that note, I think we have some new picks coming out in the uranium space to benefit from that. I won't speak too much to that now, but readers and listeners should stay tuned for sure.
Can you tease a timeline?
By the end of the year.
Excellent. Nick Hodge, founder of the Outsider Club.
Thanks, Gerardo.
Thank you.